On this exciting episode, we're back from a long break and taking a trip with Paul and Perry to a missile base. Babs Hale and Billy Tallman are nowhere to be seen, but the corporate espionage and Cold War military vibes are strong. It's Perry Mason, Season 4, Episode 25, The Case of the Misguided Missile. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose, pretty simple, provide an audio companion to every episode of television's greatest legal drama, Perry Mason. Each episode, we give you a summary of the plot. We even compare plots with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel. If the episode was an adaptation, we give you a little trivia, reveal the episode's theme, revel in a Perry proverb, that's a pearl of wisdom from the man himself, and finally, we head to the water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of our fave legal cruise adventures. But first, say it with me, to the law library! Each time we visit the law library, we discuss a legal conundrum from Perry's case that helps us set future courtroom precedents. In this trip to the law library, we discuss contract law. Our defendant's got a job offer from a rival of the private missile company he's currently working for. Tell us all about it, Jerry.
Oh, like it or not, I'm going to have to resign my commission.
Have you signed with Huxley?
That's why I asked you to come up, Perry. Now, these are the contracts. I'd appreciate you looking them over before I signed.
Something wrong with them?
Huxley's a strong competitor of Morgan. Now, am I running a danger of conflict of interest by signing with Huxley?
4 things worth noting. 1, military consultants likely had rules about conflicts of interest to ensure they didn't do anything that could hurt national security. 2, while non-disclosure agreements weren't as common in 1961 as they are in the year of our Lord 2024, they existed, especially in jobs where secret information was involved. Number 3, if Jerry left the military to work full-time for another company, it's a big deal. He'd want to make sure he followed both his military contract and whatever agreement he had with the original company he was consulting for. Number 4, if Jerry switched from being a military consultant to a full-time employee, oh my goodness, that would have ramifications for his military service. That is what Perry would have to look at as he reviews Jerry's papers. Of course, you know, if you've watched the episode, that our man Jer is staying put as the episode ends. All this is hypothetical. Now, let's get to the plot of this episode. The Case of the Misguided Missile. Jerry Reynolds works for the government, but he's overseeing a special rocket project called the Scepter for a private company named after its founder. Give us the situation, Mr. Morgan.
That scepter out there is my baby. My own flesh and blood. I've got a lifetime tied up in it. I'll relax, all right, after it flies, and this time it better fly.
I don't need to tell you that William, don't call me Billy Shallert, is in the background of the rocket launch taking a nip, do I? His love for the sauce, it's well known. Well, the scepter goes down in a blaze of glory. Tell us how that feels, will ya?
There's no reason. There's no reason for that bird not flying. No reason at all. You know it had to fly. Take a look at that screen. Take a look at what's happening out there. Tell me why. Why?
Morgan PR maven Helen Rand and Jerry Reynolds discuss the public relations debacle that is this latest rocket disaster. Fortunately, there's another Friday, which means another hopeful launch. Well, the situation is dire enough that the Air Force has called in Colonel Sloan and Captain Mike Caldwell. Allay Jerry Reynolds' worries, wouldn't you, Colonel Sloan?
You'll be in charge of investigating the possibility of something other than your functional failures in your missile aborts.
Other than functional failures?
The right-handed monkey wrench on a left-handed nut and bolt. Never can tell, can you? So give him everything you've got and all about her he asked for. Turn that aspect of the job entirely over to him.
Anything you say, Colonel Sloan.
Jerry, all I want you to do is to concentrate on making that next shot a success. Air Force could use a bird like the Scepter. Just leave the rest of the details to us. Now, let's see about quarters.
Using the wrong hand to tighten a bolt, that is serious. There's, as they say, no love lost between old Mike Caldwell and our man Jerry Reynolds. They make eyes at each other while Bill Shallert looks at a rocket, and then tell us why Bill Shallert's drinking habits matter, would you, Mike?
Now tell me, were you just as heavy a drinker then as you are now?
It's none of your concern.
The Air Force and the American people have spent millions of dollars on the Scepter so far. And that's a pretty expensive bar tab, Doctor.
Caldwell talks to Dr. Harrison next. This is a man who's been known to give Billy Shals the eye roll, too. Caldwell hints that Harrison played a part in the sabotage, and Dr. Harrison kicks it back to Caldwell.
For the man that comes up with this radically new inertial guidance, it could be worth a lot of money to him, couldn't it?
If the man you mean is me, and I did develop the system, it belonged to the Morgan Company, not to me.
It might be to your advantage not to complete it, as long as Morgan was still in business. By the way, you took Dr. Bradbury's place before those last pre-flight tests, did you?
Yeah. Dan Morgan and I helped with his checkout. Now that you've all but intimated that I sabotaged the Scepter, why don't you ask Mr. Morgan if he didn't destroy his own missile?
Then there's Dan Morgan himself. He shows up at the headquarters of his own company to find Caldwell behind his desk. Mike Caldwell gives us a speech on why it's a matter of national security that he find the culprit.
My job is not to hurt anybody, Miss Rand. But it is to find the truth, regardless of whether anybody does get hurt.
Exactly what do you mean?
Aside from the question of patriotism or the survival of the free world.
Hear, hear.
Well, however you characterize it, Miss Rand, there also happens to be the question of the billions of dollars spent on the missile programs.
Thus appeareth Perry Mason, and the news that Jerry's getting a raise by jumping from the Air Force and working as a consultant with Morgan to another private firm named after its president, a mustachioed gent by the name of Huxley. Conflict of interest, and that's exactly the issue Perry wants to look at. When we see Morgan PR maven Helen Rand next, she's telling Huxley all about what's happening in her neck of the woods. With her tongue, the two share a drink and tell you all you need to know.
George, that shot tomorrow morning will never get off the ground.
Put an awful lot of stock in wishful thinking, Helen. This isn't a fairy tale world. Well, here's to the Scepter.
To Morgan's bird, and to the egg it will lay.
Then it's the day of the flight. Everybody's got their self-talk going, and what do you know? The rocket launch is successful. There's just one problem. Caldwell is dead.
Yes, Captain McVeigh, the safety officer thought it was some sort of unidentified object on the firing range.
There was no object, sir. It was a man's body. Captain Caldwell of the Inspector General's office.
Caldwell?
He's been murdered.
Somebody get Perry and Paul on the job, stat! Then tell us all about it, Captain McVeigh, while you roll out the red carpet for our boys and sound like Tom Bodette.
Now, you've both been cleared by security, so in addition to the plane that brought you up here, there's a car and a driver for each of you, and identification badges to get you around the base. So you're all set. Your driver will take you to Major Reynolds.
Jerry fills Perry in on why he and Caldwell had beef.
Well, then when Caldwell was grounded for having failed to carry out an order, he blamed me for his being reprimanded and reassigned. Claimed I'd never given him the order. I never told you about it, Perry. I was in Korea quite a few years back.
Caldwell thought the conflict of interest that Reynolds had was the reason for the sabotage. And when Perry goes to see the Lothario Huxley, Huxley gets indignant before lying to Perry and getting caught with Helen, my lips are sealed, Rand. Well, the evidence, she's a mountain against our boy Jerry, and the charge is clear.
I'm really sorry, Mr. Mason.
Sorry, Captain?
I'm going to recommend that the General Court-Martial be convened and that Major Reynolds be tried for murder.
Witnesses in court, which does not feature a place for witnesses to sit, they're sequestered off in another room, include Dr. Stanton, Dr. Harrison, Sergeant Lewis, Dr. Bradbury, that's Billy Showles, Captain McVeigh, Old Man Dan Morgan, and Lothario Huxley. Also, we get some gratuitous praise for military attorneys.
All the service attorneys I've met are highly competent. They're as dedicated to the legal profession as they are to the uniforms they wear.
Then Perry calls an audible and makes a special request.
May it please the court, I request that each and every witness connected with this trial be physically present in the courtroom during my cross-examination of Mr. Huxley.
The court's answer?
The Air Force is interested in justice, not form.
Once everyone is inside the court, witnesses included, Perry lets the news of Huxley and Rand's affair do its work.
Yes, of love.
You cheat. You no good cheat.
Dad, shut up. You've got it all wrong.
I thought you were supposed to be in love with me.
There'll be
That
order in
check,
this
that
court.
was just an advance. I was supposed to wreck that missile and put Morgan out of business, and then the whole world was going to be ours, yours and mine.
Shut up, you man. Just shut up.
Next, we get Old Man Dan Morgan on the stand. He sings like a canary.
You don't understand what it means to build out of nothing but a dream. Why, jets hadn't even been invented when I was talking about missiles. Morgan, the fool visionary, they called me. But I fought it through. Yes, I killed him. Let it be. No matter what. I built the first scepter, and it flew.
Old Man Morgan did the crime, doo-dah, prison sentence, maximum time, oh, the doo-dah day. And in the denouement, we get to hear about Jerry's future.
Well, Perry, what can I say but thanks? Oh, it might help if I told you that I've decided not to take this uniform off. Somebody still has to nurse the scepter along. I'd like it to be me.
Stay put, man! Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is a deep dive on an actor or actress who guest starred in the episode. Finally, a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Our Paul prompt for this episode concerns private missile makers in the Cold War. The 2 names in this episode are Morgan and Huxley. Not real, though. See if you can find 2 real, honest-to-goodness private rocket companies that someone like Jerry Reynolds might have consulted for circa 1961, and I'll be proud to call you Paul. Our Della for this episode could be none other than Robert Bobby Rockwell, Jerry Reynolds himself.
I might just be relieved of the whole problem.
Here's 10 about Jer. Robert Rockwell, born October 15, 1920. Lake Bluff, Illinois, studied at the, wait for it, Pasadena Playhouse, College of Theater Arts. Numero dos, served in the U.S. Navy. 3, worked at Pasadena Playhouse and appeared in more than 30 films, including War of the Worlds, after becoming a film contract player at Republic Pictures. Numero cuatro, had some notable stage roles, including the Broadway production of Cyrano de Bergerac and the La Jolla Playhouse performance of A More Perfect Union alongside Ginger Rogers. Number 5, Rockwell was known for his role as Philip Boynton in Our Miss Brooks alongside Eve Arden, Miss Brooks. According to the Eve Arden biography, Rockwell had to overcome the typecasting he received as a result of this role for the rest of his acting career. Number 6, fun fact, Robert Rockwell was the first live-action father of Superman. He was Clark Kent's papa in the original episode of the George Reeves Superman show in 1953. Number 7, his acting career spanned over 50 years, appearances in over 350 TV shows. In Perry Mason, we'll see him 3 more times. Number 8, Rockwell was a prolific voiceover artist, contributing to over 200 projects, including the iconic Werther's Original Candy commercial. Number 9, passed away in Malibu at the age of 82 on the same day as his co-star Richard Crenna's memorial service. And number 10, survived by his wife Elizabeth, who he had been married to for 60 years. Our Perry for this episode involves some deets about Perry's military past. Here we go.
Hey, how about that? Joint operations. Navy and the Air Force in a frontal assault on the officers' bar on Mugmug, the enchanted isle of the Pacific. Remember that, Perry? When was it? 44, 45?
44.
Now that is fun. Mutual assault on an officer's bar, eh? Please, Perry and Jerry, don't hurt them. Now there's a sitcom idea. Our theme for this episode, being misguided. Number 1, well, we'll start with Billy Shallard's Dr. Bradbury. Hey, I know what'll help my career, drowning in the sauce and taking checks from the PR person who works for the company she wants me to tank. Verdict, misguided. Number 2, how about the deceased, Mike Caldwell? The guy's right that someone is behind the failed rocket. It's sabotage, not simple negligence, but he wants Jerry to be guilty and ignores evidence to the contrary. That leads him to the wrong conclusion and leads him to his death. Verdict, misguided. Number 3, how about Huxley and PR Maven Rand? Those crazy kids are messing around with a government contract. Who do they think they are? They think they're not going to get caught offering Jerry $35,000 and then throwing the checks around with their name on it to drunks? Come on. Verdict, misguided. Finally, old Dan Morgan himself, the ultimate example of a misguided character. Visionary? Yes. Murderer? Yes. Come on, my bird flew. You'll be singing that song in Sing Sing. Now it's time to hear a Perry proverb. In this episode's Perry proverb, our dude trots out a handy metaphor for catching prey in the courtroom. Reel 'em in, Perry!
Paul, I think it's time to get out the tackle and do a little fishing.
A close second for the Perry proverb in this particular episode is his early quip to Jerry.
Oh, Perry, I can get you to San Francisco real quick.
Thank you, no. I think jets are fast enough for me.
Speaking of speed, let's get to our water cooler right quick. I need a swig.
There is one thing I don't understand. Go on, Paul.
Each time we visit the water cooler, we check in with our resident PIs, polish investigators, who did some legwork to track down the answer we posed as a Paul prompt in the prior episode. It's been quite a while since the last episode, but our Paul prompt from the case of the violent vest involved the moral turpitude clause in our defendant's modeling contract.
They could break it if they could prove you were charged with moral turpitude, you've been married, if you joined a subversive group, or committed a criminal act. But of course, none of these things apply to you.
We asked what would have been in such a clause in 1961. My dad wrote in about subversive organizations, which in 1961 were defined as communist organizations, or groups that acted as communist fronts. My dad further sent in a definition of moral turpitude, quote, conduct that shocks the public conscience or which does not fall within the moral standards held by the community. He gave examples: joining an organization that's associated with communism, or engaging in behavior that involved violence, baseness, evil intent, a lack of good morals, or good moral character. Most aggravated felonies count as crimes involving moral turpitude. Aunt Mai chimed in too, quote, during the 1940s and 50s, several studios used morality clauses to terminate talent contracts based on politics. Morality clauses were used to dismiss the so-called Hollywood 10, a group of 10 actors and screenwriters who were jailed and blacklisted by movie studios for publicly denouncing the activities of the House Committee on Un-American Activities, HUAC, during its investigation of communist influence in Hollywood. Thanks, Pauls! Now, it's time for a few listener letters. Well, it's been 4 months since I made an episode of the Perry Pod. We have some letters that needed a response, or at least acknowledgement. Trivia maven Nancy sent along a 30-minute interview with Robert Benavides from the Raymond Burr Vineyards, where he explains why his late 50s and early 1960s TV credits came under the name Robert Harrow, just like the credit he received for our last episode, The Case of the Violet Vest. I give you the link to that interview, delivered from Nancy, in the show notes. New listener Jane wrote in to say she appreciates the little touches of reality added by the show's sets and props. Quote, as I rewatch Perry Mason episodes over and over, I really appreciate the sets, all the details they put in, the clutter of an old house, the pictures on the walls, the furniture, the knickknacks all fit so well and add so much. I can smell the house smells. When Della pours coffee, I can see the steam coming off the coffee. In so many other TV shows and movies, the actors are drinking some cold, dark liquid pretending it's hot coffee, and right away I know they're faking. It matters. I can't explain why it does, but it does. In one episode I watched recently, the scene begins with a waiter making a Caesar salad at Perry's table, and at the end of the scene, he serves Perry and Della the salad. Those little touches are so authentic. End quote. Great details, Jane. Richard Rossi sent this short note, quote, love your podcast, Jonathan. I'm a filmmaker in Hollywood who watches Perry every morning and evening on MeTV. End quote. Thanks for the shout out, Richard. And thanks to Karen, who wrote in to see if I was doing okay. Yep, Karen, the spring semester was a busy one, but graduation is over, and I hope to complete season 4 in the coming weeks. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Have a comment on the episode or the pod in general? Drop me a line at theperrypod@gmail.com. Next time, Perry administers a lie detector test, and the witness surprises him by telling the truth? It's all there in The Case of the Duplicate Daughter. Join us, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue